Myers. Thompson.
Here.
Sherburne County Commissioner meeting come to order. All commissioners are present.
Perfect. All right, everybody, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening, everybody. Nice to see a nice large crowd here tonight. We have a few different items for discussion tonight. The first one is going to be a discussion with the hospital and the county and us about the future plans of the hospital and where things lay right now. I don't know who would like to take that over.
All right, I guess I'll run with it. So, as I do my monthly reports around to the city and the county, we've talked about just the current status of our building and, how it's, its age and whatnot. So, we had some engineers and architects come in just to kind of give us a summation of the building, and so I've got just a floor plan of the building here that I'm working off of, but just the bottom line to give you some background and some statistics. The main building was built in 1972, so you can do the math, it's 51 years old. The specialty clinic was built in 1995, so it's now 28 years old. The medical clinic was built in 1998, so it's 25 years old. We also did a little CT edition where the CT scanner is. That's also from 98, so that's also 25 years old. So in the course of this study, we had, again, the architect engineers come through, the ones that they do a lot of this work in this area. Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado, so they're pretty well versed. They just took a look at our current structure and just some of the issues that they found that we wanted to mention. One is just the total layout of the building is, if you go from the clinic, where that's our main entrance, that's where registration is, and you're to go to the hospital, that's clear across the full length of the building. So some of the proximity issues were some of the issues that they talked about. One of the other concerns they had was looking at just the fact of the changes in regulations and laws. If we touch anything as far as reconstruction or a remodel or upgrade, then all the new laws come into effect, which would then make us have to touch just about every part of the building. For example,
Can you guys use a microphone? We have people with hearing difficulties and we can barely hear you.
if I had one.
I don't know that we have one available from in here. I assume we got, is this picking up for online?
But that's not a microphone, that's
We'll
just.
just, we'll just have to try to speak louder for you.
Okay.
I would recommend.
Would you, I can walk to the middle. Would that help if I walked up here?
Have him walk through the middle, and he'll be up there in front
That
of
would
you.
be good.
Okay, how
Yeah.
about? Good.
Dang, where's the spotlight?
It's coming.
It's coming. You want me back here by the phone speaker or just up here?
I think you're right there is fine. Right there is
Right here.
fine.
Close to him.
You told me that was my seat. All right, I'll stand. So, continuing on, what they found in their coming and looking through the building, they just found a number of things that we need to be taking into consideration. Not just the age of the building, but we're starting to have things start to happen just because of age. For example, the boilers were built for 40 years, well, they're 51 years old. So, you can, we have already replaced this year an HVAC unit. Okay, you know that's going to happen. We rebuilt one of the coils in the chiller system. So it's now brand new, but it's had to be rebuilt. So there's just those things happening. We've got quotes out right now for the roof on the building. That could run us 7 figures. That could be quite a bit. So the concern is, where do we go with this? With an aging building where we're gonna continue to have these type of issues come up. It's just a fact, that's just in there. So we asked them to take a look at some of the other points. We look at our patient rooms. They're fine for our use today, but if we had to comply with current regulations, our rooms are too small. There has to be so much space between the wall and the room, the door and the room, there has to be these clearances. The trauma room and the emergency room doesn't fit current code. It's okay, it's all grandfathered in, we're not out of compliance, so we're not really worried about it being out. We're fine in compliance as long as we don't touch anything. But again, based on the issues we just talked about, the age of the building, you're gonna have to touch something somewhere. And the minute we do that, we have to put in, the fire code requires to have a building completely sprinkled. Almost every bit of ventilation would have to be touched, so that means repairing the walls to see when you stop the building. Obviously, that would have a tendency to disrupt patient care. So those are some of the concerns that the board has been aware of, that the views that the administration have been working on. So that was the conversation we had tonight. If we're gonna go forward, before we do anything, we ought to be talking about what, if this is a county hospital, we own it, county, that's taxpayers, basically. So what do we look at? Do we look at a major remodel, refresh? Do we look at building, rebuilding? And those are just some of the discussions that are coming down. And before we step any further, we want to get the two commissions groups in and bring them up to speed and get some directions tonight. So that's really all I have. Do you guys have questions? Is there more, Greg? I know we've talked about more detail, but
How much higher is taxes going to be?
that's the beauty of this. There would be no taxes. This would be done with, if we were to do a new building, we would build it with what they call a revenue bond, we finance through FDA. The public building commission, things appointed by the commissioners, would be the guarantor that it would not be a general obligation tax bond, so there would be no taxes.
Another thing, the last meeting I went to at the hospital, it was getting rid of the dialysis machines. What's the purpose of doing, are they going to keep what they got? Or are they going to get rid of more?
Well, you have to understand those are two different issues. The dialysis going away was a staffing issue. We simply did not have the
You
ability.
keep rid staffing.
So, this we're not talking about, is not a staffing function, this is a function of the facility itself, the physical plant. And so what do we do with it? It's not reducing services in any way, it has nothing to do with that. It actually hopefully would enhance service.
Do you have any idea what a new remodel would do, or a complete remodel would
What
cost,
it would cost,
as opposed to a brand new building?
the cost is actually would be pretty similar. What the engineers, they said, they did not give us a quote for a cost, so I would be misleading Bill to say anything about, hey, we can do this for 10 million or 20 million, and that's not gonna be the case. Remodel today costs just about as much as building. You have to touch everything.
Yeah, before you decide to get a new building, are you going to check out the cost of a remodel, or just?
Of course, yes. That's what we have to, before anything went anywhere, we have to do what they call a feasibility study, which would talk about the various costs and how it can be paid for, how, what is the whole total feasibility of making this work. Yes, sir.
How many years will it take for the feasibility test?
That study can be done fairly quickly, a matter of months, not years. So it's just a matter of having to order it.
Okay.
Where's it going to be built?
Where's what can be built?
The new hospital. Yeah.
Sorry. Again, those are things we have to figure out. Right now, we do have land available that the foundation, the Hocking Foundation owns, that's just adjacent, just to the west, just to the west of the current hospital. And then we have that big open grass, we already have about 5.6 acres there. Putting those two together would be sufficient size. We don't have the right size.
Closer to I-70.
We don't have any property closer to I-70. The building where I'm just talking about gives us direct access straight up 27 to the hospital.
Yeah.
So that's good access for I-70.
I think there's state land down there.
I don't have any ability to do that. Yes, ma'am.
Well, do you plan to add any services to the hospital through the remodel of the building? And you kind of bring in other doctors?
So I don't have an answer to that right now at this point, what exactly those stations might be. We have, right now, we are staffed appropriately, we have sufficient capacity, but we're always looking for new doctors. You know, if we've got a new doctor to come, we'll wrap them, we'll bring them in. Billy, any other questions?
Yeah, if you do build a new hospital, have you thought of what you do with the old building, or if it's in bad shape, what would you do with the old building?
Thus, these discussions that we're starting. So that building could be fully utilized for other functionality, but,
Such as,
well, I'm not going to speculate what the community needs are, but, for example, I will tell you something. The existing clinic space would be wonderful for a rehab facility. We need space in our rehab right now. So with our new services, we made an expansion of some of the existing services. I mean, the community's talking about daycare forever. Is that something the community wants to take on and try to revitalize? But, you know, there's all kinds of purposes it could be used for. I'm not the expert on that. Yes, sir.
What about a birthing center?
What about a birthing center?
Yes.
If I may, Craig, if I can interject.
You bet.
I'm just going to. We are, although I do appreciate the candor from the crowd and the questions that are happening, we're delving into territories that are well beyond the scope of what our intentions were with this meeting, which is basically to get a feel for how everybody is feeling about where the facility is and where the need may go in the future. A lot of these questions are more specific, geared questions towards maybe the hospital board at a hospital board meeting, or at a question, or further down the line, if we're further along in the process.
At a planning committee or something
Yeah.
like, and that's not what
Yeah,
we're.
because there's a lot of, they're good questions, but they're not questions that there's any answers to for this meeting.
And with respect to that, Aaron, what I'm thinking is, we're interested in knowing, right now, I believe we're status critical access hospital, are we?
Correct.
How many rooms do we have now?
We are licensed for 25.
25.
We're
So if-
staffed for 12, so there's a difference.
So if we have to build bigger, are we gonna have less, are we gonna have more? Are we gonna have less services, are we gonna have more services? These are the concerns that bring up these kind of questions right here.
Yeah.
So,
And those are good questions to have, good concerns to have, that need to be addressed as the process continues. You know, because we're not at a point where we're discussing building a facility. I mean, the building is not being discussed, and what's going in there is not, that's not what's on the discussion.
I can assure you, those questions will be answered. We're just
Not there.
really preliminary right
Just
now.
beginning.
Yeah.
Still, why build a brand new building if we can't make it functional?
oh, yeah, absolutely, you wouldn't. You wouldn't build a
We can't
non-functional
get
building.
help, you know, we've got, that's number one problem I understand,
Yeah.
and the way to fill it.
You got one down.
And I think that's part of the, I think maybe there may be a misnomer, miscommunication. This meeting isn't about we are building a new facility. No, this meeting is about what are the needs and what direction needs to happen going forward from this point. Maybe that is
Good answer.
a new building, maybe that's remodeling the old building, maybe, so there's a lot of things in there that aren't being answered at this meeting tonight. This is more of it's supposed to be kind of a general, fill us in on where things are in the hospital's process and where they are, and what we can do to help on our end, if there's anything we can do to help them complete their process of what they feel is best, and then also continue to reach out with you guys. So these are all great questions, and they're questions that will be answered, but we don't have, those answers aren't available tonight because they haven't been addressed.
Okay.
Well, in response to that, to add to that then, this meeting should let you guys know that we don't want to decrease services. We don't want to decrease doctors. We don't want to decrease rooms. We want to be available to come to a hospital that's accessible for our needs here.
Absolutely, there's no intention of doing any of that.
So if it needs
So
to
it's already
be
done.
dialysis.
I just had more or less the same thing. Why would we try to repair what we already have if it's outdated? We're throwing money after bad money.
That's actually the discussion is, do you spend money in trying to fix up an older building, or do you look at new? And that's kind of the discussion we're having, and that is much broader than all these other specific questions.
I can see no point. I mean, if you're gonna move forward, you don't take the old Molly and Melly with you. You move on to the next frontier.
All right.
Well,
That's
from a
what
county
I have.
perspective, that's exactly
Yeah.
what we were facing with the old nursing facility. It was still a good building, it just wasn't good for what it was being used for. So it was time to move on, and we did. And I think it's working out really well. I haven't heard any negatives. So we have to keep an open mind, we do. There's a lot of unanswered questions yet. The last thing the county wants is an empty building sitting there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of good questions have to be answered yet.
Is the funding available for both projects?
Meaning the
That
hospital.
we don't have to raise our taxes?
He said we're not raising taxes.
Yeah, he said it was new.
I've heard that before.
Okay, you said there would be no taxes.
This, if we were to do this, it would be under an FDA financing arrangement.
Right.
For either
And-
thing?
Yes.
Oh,
So you're asking for what kind of direction you want us to use to go? Like you want the direction from us saying, yeah, we want to explore a new building? Or you want direction from us saying, what can we do with our old building and stay put?
I'm not sure we were asking for a specific as much as saying, we're at a point where we are at a crossroads. So we wanted to keep everybody informed, and I'm trying to do that in my meetings that I come every month and try to let you know what's going on. So we're at a point where we just kind of, we could use a little direction.
Well, I mean, ultimately, both of those questions have to be answered.
Yeah, they do.
and that's where the feasibility thing comes in, is that right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, okay, and that is a questionnaire that goes out to every citizen in the county, is that correct or not?
No,
Okay,
no,
okay.
that is basically a financial document that
Oh.
looks at
Okay.
our current reimbursements with the government, with Medicare.
Right.
It looks at our service lines, it looks at our revenue, and then it does some projections out into the future. Is it feasible to take on this kind of debt? Because this is debt.
Oh, sure.
There's no question, this is debt. So if you're gonna take on 60, 80, $100 million, how are you gonna pay for it?
Gotcha.
And that's what the feasibility does.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, please understand that under the FDA rules, and part of this is because we're a Medicare, because of the critical access status, a good portion of the cost would be reimbursed to the extent of our Medicare percentage. So if we're 60% Medicare, 60% of the project is going to be paid for through our cost report, through our government reimbursements. So.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm new to the area. So the advantages that the wife and I had in Minnesota, we cannot have here
Why not?
because you did not offer them.
And what are they? What are you referring to?
Medicare Advantage,
Well, that has nothing to do with these folks, though.
but I'm not, okay, I'm not asking for that. What I'm trying to say is that I would like to see the community grow. From what I have heard, there's a lot of negativism about the community and what has happened in the past. Are we going to forget that and chalk it up as experience and move forward? Or are we gonna sit back and keep complaining about what Joe Blow did yesterday? I would like to see, because I'm Jerry Keegan. My wife is Sam, and it's only a nickname. But we would like to see a community that moves forward, that thrives.
Well, sir, that's,
wants other people in.
right, that's exactly why we're here. Because we believe, my belief, and most of the people in this room have heard me say this, is the community and the hospital are one. Neither will survive or thrive without the other. They have to work together. Thus, let's bring this to a public discussion as to where we're going, rather than us make a decision in a vacuum and then say, here's what we're doing. No one's going to be happy with that. So we're going to be right up front, and exactly like you're saying, we need to put the past in the past, learn from it, but move forward in a positive direction where we're working together.
Thank you.
In that feasibility study, you will consider services like dialysis again, or is that not gonna?
That probably, again, will not be part of the feasibility study, but that could be part of our planning decisions.
Well, I kind of got an emotional thing on that, because I know a gentleman here in town, I'm speaking out of school here, that drew over 200 missions in Vietnam, and he's on dialysis now. He has to go to Hayes 3 times a week. Now, to me, that's, just don't seem right. And that's just one case, I understand that.
Right.
You know, but.
But one case is important, I get it.
There's a more than that. But there again, that was in the past. Okay, we need to start from today and go forward.
Yeah, but we don't.
Yeah, and I think,
We need to learn what we got about the kids in the past.
Well, I don't disagree with that, yeah.
so here,
Past and we look at in 1968, when this hospital was built, through 72, we had 145 students in each class in the high school. Now we're down to 44.
Yeah.
So we changed a great deal of the numbers that we have, and the numbers made it work. Now we've got a lesser number, but we can still make it work. We have the opportunity of businesses coming in. Schooler Grain has expanded out of the sunflower plant, and they're wanting to start crushing. Is that gonna bring us some more jobs? Yes, but it's gonna take another year or two. We've got a meat packing plant that's growing in Canareta, but we gotta get through the government red tape before we can get it. There again, we've got more people coming in. We've got other projects. We had a talk of a bakery coming in Woodland, Kansas. Well, where are they gonna live? That's another project we have to worry about. So we've got a lot of things growing here. You know, I can look back, yeah, when I graduated high school, I bought a brand new car for $3,300. Now I can't even buy the tires for it. So, you know, we have to think how we're gonna get positively ahead. And it's gonna take a lot of work, and it's gonna be, you know, is there negativity? Yes, there is. But we gotta make this thing go in our favor. Are we gonna catch a lot of heck for some stuff? I'm pretty sure. But they're working on trying to make things the best that they can. Sometimes their hands are tied, just like you said. When you touch one thing in that building, you spread it like a disease going everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Because you have to abide by the rules that are set. If the rules are set right now, you know, we don't do anything and we just keep going, we can get by, we're grandfathered in. but we know we can't stay there. We've got to look forward to it, and that's the thing. You know, unfortunately, it does cost a lot of money. We can't build those things for what we did in 1972.
No.
You know, 50 years more of interest is really compounded.
Yeah. Well, I did a hospital expansion in 2015, just to give you on your point. And the square footage cost was originally bid at about $400 a square foot. We ended up completing the project a little over $500 a square foot. Projections today are $650 to $700 a square foot if we turned the dirt over today and started work. And we all know we're years away from that. So when we actually build, are we talking square footage cost of 600? Probably not. It's probably gonna be closer to
Probably
8.
gonna look to 800.
Yeah.
800 and 1,000.
And so you can do the math, what that means.
And you can probably look to that $800 price, but it all in, at the end of the day, it's probably more like $1,000.
Probably.
Because you've got everything else, materials are not gonna be coming down, they're gonna be going back up.
Yeah.
So
one of the things you have, the current legislation, by the way, requires us, if we do FDA, and I'm not saying this is bad, I'm just saying this is reality, is what they call Build America, Buy America. That actually increases your building costs about anywhere from 19 to 25% are projections. So, and there's nothing right or wrong, it's just that's the new rule. That's what we have to do.
What's your thoughts on the wellness center?
I don't know that I have any specific, I think it's wonderful for a community to have it. Does it make any money? No. So that's again, does the county or the city, whoever's putting the wellness center in, they gotta look at it, can we handle that in our budget? And is that one of those things we say, the community has enough need that we do? So I wouldn't say yay or nay on that, I would say it's just one of the things we have to talk about.
I'm not too sure, but you could incorporate a wellness center and build an addition onto that building where you wouldn't have to touch the old building. You could use it for stuff. You need
Yeah.
in your physical therapy department, it's ridiculous. Your lab's a whole. If you put your physical therapy out there and emergency, and you could add the services without having to give up the whole building.
Correct. Those are some of the things we have to look at. That's this whole discussion.
Yeah. You know, this is gonna be the beginning of what I'm gonna assume is gonna be many open discussions into the future as this process really begins. It's just at the very infant stages of anything.
The old building could be used for offices, and in fact, I think we've got 2 wings, the birthday wing and the A wing, or offices anyway.
Yeah, but we're putting the cart way in front of the horse at this point, in this stage, you know. And if the great ideas, there's lots of great ideas that need to be considered in the process, you know, thought about and discussed as the process continues forward, where it determines what's gonna actually happen.
Yeah, we have to take all things into consideration. You're absolutely right.
But as far as, you know, I can't talk about the community, but I can tell you that for sure everybody sitting up here wants nothing but the best for the community and is hoping for growth and, you know, and best positive outcomes for everyone. You know, that's what we want. That's why most of us, you know, volunteered to be in our positions, and you guys voted us in here because you thought that we can do that for you guys, which is what we're trying to do. You know, and most things have a lot of complicated steps to them before you get anywhere. But no, we are all trying our best, and we're all working towards the same direction, at least we're trying to, which is why all 3 of these entities are in this room right now having this discussion. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the financing that makes it sound like you said no taxes. So is it a grant? Because later you referred to it is a $60 or $80 million debt. And being a county-owned hospital, if it's a debt, where are you going to repay this from?
And that's where that feasibility study comes into play to determine the feasibility of being able to pay that debt. So the specific financing tool that you use is called a revenue bond, which means the security for that debt is the actual revenue of the hospital, of the function. That's why I said not a general obligation bond, which would be taxes. It doesn't mean the debt goes away. It's just, what's the source of repayment? And that's where the feasibility study comes in.
And does the hospital generate enough income to, I mean, I've understood for years it's been in the negative, and now we're kind of getting some positive. I don't know if that's from the COVID money, or if that's, you know, why we're now showing positive, and I might be all wrong, so.
You're not very far off. 4 years ago, we were borrowing money to make payroll, basically. And we had no cash. And we've built that today, part of that through the COVID funds, part of it through, you know, we did some pretty significant financial restructuring 4 or 5 years ago that was pretty hard, and we went through it. I mean, Greg, you were here then, so we
About half and half.
did a lot
Half
of
COVID
work.
money,
Yeah,
half of curbing expenses.
right. So, you know, we're sitting today, yes, we look pretty good on the balance sheet today. But you take on that kind of debt, and what happens to your balance sheet? So that's what we've got to figure out, is can we do it?
So does the feasibility study tell you the limit of what you can spend?
Yes,
Yes.
it
What
does.
your revenue is?
Right, and we've already done a initial, not full feasibility study, but debt capacity. And according to that debt capacity, we could afford between 60 and 80 million.
It takes,
And
that's
how long
how
does
many
this
years does
feasibility,
that take?
is a feasibility study like, you know, accounting for the COVID years and that money? Or is it over the past 10 years?
It
20
takes our
years?
last few years, but it really looks at our operations, and it really looks at our cash flows. So COVID would not figure into that, no.
And look at the changes in healthcare already today. I mean, that's a little hard to futuristically, I mean, it's ever changing. And you're gonna see great changes here in the near term.
So all we may need is a TV set sitting in there to.
That's right,
Telemedicine.
that's right. I think an objective from the hospital's point of view is we try to be as transparent as possible. That's been kind of our MO, and we want to be transparent, and, you know, sure, we don't have a lot of answers to questions tonight, but it's preliminary right now, and we believe we're trying to take the right steps going forward to have the best possible outcome.
And ignoring it's not gonna fix it.
No.
Right.
I mean, we know what's happening.
And I think that's what's brought to a head. We are seeing the costs hitting us right now to continue to maintain that building. So then it becomes, do you keep shoveling out those costs, or do you, at some point, do you say, we gotta do something different? And that's where we're at.
And being, you know, I'm thankful that our head is above water and we can have these conversations. I mean, wasn't very long ago, this was the last thing we were thinking about, but, you know, it's been good for us. In the state of Kansas, Goodland Regional is sitting real well compared to other hospitals. That's a fact.
You know, there's a point in time when you.
What's that?
Who would be doing this feasibility study?
So we've worked a little bit with a group called Eide Bailey. We have also a CPA firm has been doing our cost reports and whatever audits. Thank you. You know, the older you get, the worse the words come. Anyway, so we would actually we'll get a couple of quotes from these various firms that specialize in this, and we would go with the most appropriate quote from that.
You know, there comes a time when expenses
outweigh a new building. And that goes with any building, any company. They have to make a decision at some time. Do we keep feeding this old building? You said a new roof, which probably on that big of a building's gonna be 7 figures or more.
Or more.
And we put that money in. You said you replaced a chiller, we replaced,
HVAC.
yeah. Those all add up. Do you keep putting lip on a pig and lipstick on a pig and keep beautifying it?
Still big.
It's still a pig. And so that those things will still keep coming and it'll keep eating up your profits. And a new facility, yeah, it's gonna be expensive, but we need to run the numbers to see what repairing the old facility completely would cost versus a new facility. And if it's within a percentage of building a new facility versus fixing the old facility, that's the way I would go.
Yeah, but even if you keep the old building, you still gotta fix it up. You can't just leave it. You still got to repair it.
You still gotta build it.
There's enough old buildings, some buildings.
But you don't have to make it completely as all the wiring for everything, because the dedicated circuits for every room, the amount of dedicated circuits for every patient room that has to be in there, and all the specifics, when you take it, put it into a daycare or something else, you don't have to have all of that.
Yeah,
You're repurposing.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, to that point, yeah, you still gotta fix it.
Yeah.
You either gotta fix it or you gotta tear it down. And believe me, that's not cheap either.
Sure. I want to clarify something on the taxes. I said no new taxes because that's not our plan. But I remember a president by the name of Mr. Bush who said that one time and it ended up biting him in the butt. So,
It doesn't mean there won't be any.
what I'm saying is, the plan is not to come to the taxpayers and say, hey, you have to buy this for us. But the plan is very much to say, how is the community going to be involved? And how's that ownership going to be? And, you know, I would be lying to any of you to say, oh, we don't see any increase in cost to the community. There will be cost increases. I mean, that's just a fact. It's going to happen. You know, but then you have to weigh out what's the benefit versus the cost. And that's in any decision. I think you were perfect in that, what you were talking about. Any business comes to this point in their lifetime where they have to decide what they're going to do to go next.
But a lot of people, they don't really mind paying that as long as they're getting the service they want.
Yeah,
So service is part of this as well.
Perception of value.
Yes, right.
I don't care what the cost is if I'm getting value for it. But if I feel like there's no value, I don't want to pay.
Precisely.
Yeah.
My only question, Jim, is how many in this room are so secure that they believe that they won't need help in health care? And how else can it be provided unless we have the doctors and nurses and the equipment necessary to do so?
Yeah. Well, that has been.
And if it was back when the Red Cross gave our soldiers, or was it, gentlemen, you can help me out here, the food, gave them C rations or something like that.
K rations too.
I will not forget my dad talking about. I'm only 73 now. But I know my future is not guaranteed. I suggest we move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I do appreciate all the candor and back and forth. You know, it's great to see that so many of you have come out to show how important this is to you. And do know that as this process moves forward, that everything will be coming out your direction to be able to have your thoughts and your input in your discussions. And you know, there's going to be a very open process with the community to make sure that we're trying to do the best for everybody and fill as many needs as possible. You know, you can't fill all needs with all things, but it'll be a good open discussion with the community. So hopefully it becomes an answer that most everybody is happy with.
And also, just for all of you that can, we do have open board meetings once a month at the hospital in the large boardroom, and if you can make it, we would love to have you come.
And when is that?
Fourth Wednesday of the month.
Fourth Wednesday of the month. It
5 p.m.
usually starts at 5 o'clock. And it is an open board. We want you to come to listen to what's going on. We won't always be talking about this particular subject in there because we have an agenda that's set each month. But it will be on the agenda as we go, through each thing that we have to get through to be able to move forward. So please do come. Yes, Bill?
Who will make the final decision on whether to build or not to build, or remodel or not to remodel? Who makes the decision, final decision?
That's a good question, Bill. I think the conversations that we've had in the boardroom have been, do we have a committee? Does that consist of the county? Does that consist of the city? Who are those people that are in that circle that are gonna make that decision? And that's, currently sitting here, I was thinking of, that's really an answer or a question I don't have the answer to. I just, I think that's something that we need to be thinking about, or who will make up that committee.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what we've probably talked about more than anything, is what that looks like.
So, Bill, I think the one thing, adding to what Greg has said, the one thing I can feel pretty confident in saying, it will not be a unilateral decision of me and administration or the hospital board. They won't make a decision that impacts this community without talking with the community, just like we were here tonight.
It's officially started, the conversation.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Here we go.
Ice is broken.
Do any of the commissioners have any other questions or comments they wish to add to this conversation at this point?
So we're gonna assume they're gonna go forward with the feasibility.
Yeah,
Would that be correct?
actually, the hospital board has put that into the budget for this year to be able to do that, so.
What's the feasibility study run?
About 70 grand.
Not gross.
You might think you're in the wrong business, right?
Well, it's better than a planning, what's ours called? Comprehensive plan, it's about 50, so it's all right.
I think it's good that, that we started this open conversation about this. For one, when people are looking to come to our community, the first thing they're gonna say is, are there jobs available? Doesn't matter how nice our hospital is, or, how nice our schools are. If there's not a job for people to come to, they're not gonna come here. And I can tell you without a doubt that the conversations that, we have all heard is that there are economic and projects and things like that are happening right now that have the potential to bring a lot of jobs here. So then we need to make sure that we have the infrastructure, we have good schools, we have good hospitals to continue to recruit and retain not only good hospital employees, but to make this a place that people want to move to so we can continue to drive economic growth in this county. So I think this is a great discussion to have. I'm in support of moving forward with the feasibility study, and I think what we're doing here is a good, open, honest discussion in front of the public.
Amen.
Yeah, growth is definitely a multifaceted issue that requires participation from everybody around this table. So,
Well, and I would also expect that as we establish a committee for all of the planning, once we get the feasibility study back, within that, as we go through, when we set a major milestone, that should be a milestone that's happening in this room right now as it is, with everybody present in the public also welcome to come, so that you understand those milestones as we're moving through it as well.
okay. Have anything more on the subject? Okay.
I'd like to clarify regarding milestones. So what you're saying is that the revenue bond would cause the hospital's revenues to pay longest debt. Is that part correct?
That's the goal, yes.
If that is the direction that ultimately is pursued.
Okay. So if the feasibility study shows that indeed the hospital has enough revenue to meet that debt, and somebody on this side of the table talked about how unpredictable healthcare is right now. So things change, suddenly or not suddenly. Revenue drops off. The debt doesn't go away. What is the next source of paying that debt?
So that's what we talked about, the revenue is the collateral. Like you would take a mortgage on your house, we can't mortgage the hospital. And no investor wants to take over the hospital anyway. So their recourse, that's the risk the investor is taking, is the revenue of the hospital, would that be sufficient to pay for it? Because this is an FDA loan we would go through, that's ultimately where the risk is with the FDA. So who would take it on? The government, when they finance this, when they put this loan out there, is assuming that risk.
So FDA stands for what?
Food and Drug Administration.
So our federal government is going to stand the risk for the debt based on the hospital's revenues.
Correct.
So, and guess who the federal government is?
All of us.
That is us.
That's why I wanted to make it very clear, while we're not suggesting that there would be a general obligation or tax bond for everyone to pay on, the reality is, this is going to take the whole community's commitment, take everybody being involved.
So the FDA would supposedly secure this debt? Is that what I'm?
You know, I feel like maybe we're digging kind of into the weeds, the
Yeah, we
financial
are.
side of things that we definitely don't have answers for, that should be given open in a public forum, because we're not there in the conversation. You know, there hasn't been a meeting with somebody regarding the debt bond or anything for the hospital at this point.
This route.
And that's it. There's a lot of assuming
We're
this
pursuing.
route is, we're pursuing.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, that's what's being discussed at the time. I
The
think.
route is not set yet, okay?
I think
We're pursuing
ultimately-
some answers to be able to get to that route, but that would be the ultimate goal. But again, we need to finish the feasibility study to be able to get there to determine what next steps.
Those are all
The
questions,
FDA's possible debt security.
those are all questions for bond counsel.
For who?
Bond counsel.
The attorneys who represent the investor.
The investors.
But once you have the results of the feasibility study, they can then be distributed to the public, and then you can
Correct.
start building on some answers, or what's the route that would be most likely to happen. Because they'll probably end up giving you Route A, and Route B, and Route C. Right.
Yes.
Again, good questions, questions that need to be asked, just questions that don't have answers at this point.
So you haven't made any other considerations other than the FDA route? Those are forthcoming.
We'll probably take donations.
We have looked at multiple options. That seems to be the best track right now. That's why Valerie said that's where we're proceeding, because that seems to be the best path. But we didn't even go down that path until coming here. So nothing's going to be going forward without discussion and the openness in front of the community.
Keep playing that $1 trillion lottery. We can bring that money in here.
But you always have good questions, and I appreciate that, and please keep coming back.
No, they're extremely good questions. Some are hard to answer right now.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody is semi-satisfied with where things are right now, and kind of where things are looking and what the next step is. I think we're going to go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. Okay. Okay. Yeah, you guys are Feel free to stay if you want. Wait for me.
You got it right? Okay. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
Gotta see numbers. Right.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda here is, maybe we're not quite
We're just building nothing. Keep them up.
Well, like you said, we don't need to bring up skeletons. That's the truth.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready? Next item on the agenda is the sales tax sunset and the start of the new sales tax. I think we had questions on, I think we did get a little bit of clarification.
I'll wait till
You're up.
We're gonna have to yell a lot to get our voices through.
Hit that gavel.
Maybe get a little closer.
We could do it. You have questions on the sales tax or?
I think, well, we put this on here because we had questions as to when the old one was officially sunsetting and when the new one had begun. We hadn't got that official word yet as of when we had discussed putting this on here, but I think since then we have got the official.
You
word.
received the check, so you know the new one started.
That's right.
July 1, the new one started. So you'll receive those checks monthly.
Okay, so the old bond is completely paid off at this point. We're starting on.
Yep.
Perfect. Next one is discussion regarding the Woollock building. I think I might just let Kent take over this one a little bit. This is kind of questions he had.
Well, with the Woolock building, we entered into agreement between the city and county commissioners long before any of the current commissioners were on board. And it was in 2012, between the city of Goodland and Sherman County. And it was regarding this building, the Woolock building, and allows the fire departments to occupy the building at that time. Which at that time, it was still the City of Goodland Fire Department and the Sherman County Rural Fire Department. Now that those two entities have merged and actually this building for the last 10 years has been occupied, and now it's basically occupied entirely by county functions. But the building is still owned by the city. And it's just a question, it makes it more difficult. It doesn't mean that it can't be done, but where the insuring of the building and all kinds of other things, the city currently insures the building and everything associated with the building. And then except for the equipment and the materials that are stored within this building. That's all insured by the county. And then with the vehicles in the building and the vehicles involved, this is kind of separate from the Woolock building as far as, with some of the fire vehicles are city fire vehicles and they're still insured that way. And some of the vehicles obviously are the county's vehicles. And eventually it's all going to be part of the merged district, But that's going to take, obviously, decades before all those fire vehicles are replaced because they're expensive pieces of equipment, let alone all the smaller pieces of equipment that are involved, and the ambulances and et cetera.
Hey, Ken, real quick on that. Jake wasn't able to be here, but he and I had a conversation on that. I think there might have been some confusion early on. I believe that all of those vehicles do need to be titled to the county.
Thank you. Thank you. It will be so
But we need to keep the inventory on the list separate, so that in the event, as things got traded off, so in the event that merger were to ever go backwards, we would be able to pinpoint the value of things that transition, so that we can separate that out. But in talking with Jake, he thought we already had that conversation. I couldn't remember, but due to the merger, all the vehicles we titled with the county would cover the insurance. But we just have to keep track as we go on of what gets traded and things like that.
We probably should have a discussion, it might need a clarification amendment, because I don't think it says it as clearly as it should.
It may not, but I didn't write it, so.
And I'm not trying to accuse or anything.
But I do think that was the intent, and that's probably the way it should have been executed. I just think maybe there was some miscommunication as things progressed, but I do believe that was the intent. Jake shared that. I did get his approval to put word in his mouth, so.
Right. No, and Jake, I've had those discussions with Jake as well, as far as the city attorney. But as far as the building itself, it's, right now, it's occupied and it serves the uses for the fire department and the ambulance department, and hopefully it does it fairly well. But the city still owns the building. And regarding the commissioners, do we want any changes in that going forward? Do we want it to be somehow be a county building instead of a city building?
Basically, does it make more sense that you guys own it and not us, considering you guys are the ones that are using it?
Well, I don't know what you said this agreement started in 2012. I don't know what the county has spent on this building, but it's pretty significant pile of money. And the big step was getting the fire departments consolidated to Sherman County Fire District 1. It's worked out well, and I think it always will. The only question we don't have is who's going to be occupying these seats 10 years from now, we don't know. Is it neater, cleaner if the county assumes ownership of the building? To me, it probably is at this juncture. I mean, it's like the last step. But that's just something that's just food for thought. We're not, I wouldn't expect a decision.
Yeah.
That's just my thoughts.
And I almost feel like maybe it's part of a bigger conversation where maybe we need to sit back down and look over the agreement as a whole again and just, how do we feel about how things are?
You always
how
feel
things
better
have gone
about
the last
spending money
few
on
years.
something you own rather than something somebody else owns.
Yes.
Me? But,
Again, like you, I feel like the merger has gone as good as we could have hoped for, and it should continue to do so in the future. I do know that when we kind of signed on the agreement, we did so knowing that we assumed that things were going to pop up as the years went on, and things that were just overlooked because it's a big thing that happened, merging the two things.
anytime you're on the relinquishing end of it, and you're trusting that this new system's gonna work, there's reason to be nervous. I mean, there is. There's gotta be a lot of trust built, and a lot of confidence going into it. And I think it was, and I think it's worked out well. We've got good leadership with the fire department. They do a hell of a job, and we're lucky. We're really lucky to have a good fire department. We're lucky to have good EMS. It's a great thing. But
I think you guys think that over, and I think, to me, I think the county should take the building over. And I think you need to think it over and let us think it over. And
Yeah, I think
that
if everybody's willing to discuss it, I think that's kind of what we were wondering, is this something that both sides
it's
want to
nothing to
discuss?
take lightly.
Come back together with.
It's just a conversation.
Yeah.
I kind of agree with you guys. I think it makes a lot of sense, and I think if we ever, get to that point in the road here in the near future, I think it's something that I would support. And I would say that, a caveat that I would add is that, if the building ever changed hands, I would, wanted some kind of assurance that the building name wouldn't change. I think that's important to us, as, named after a city employee that, gave a lot to the city of Goodland. I think that would be important to us to make sure that lived on in perpetuity. So.
Absolutely.
The one other caveat, since proximity is so close to City Hall, if the county would move out of the building and not use the building anymore for whatever reason, that there be some, either first look at it by the city or at least some input from the city about what the building would be used for because of its proximity to City Hall and all of our other operations on the back side here. And in the county dispatch needs some next to it. There's an importance. I don't expect that. I expect the fire department to use this building for the next generation, but you never know.
No, you don't. You never know.
Okay, we'll discuss that in the future, for sure. Okay, last thing on our agenda is an update to the FEMA floodplain map. And again, I'm going to refer over here to Kent for that one.
I talked with state of Kansas, and they're working on floodplain mapping for a number of neighboring counties. And I brought it up because the FEMA floodplain panel, or the floodplain map that is used for the city of Goodland, is last updated in 1981. There is no FEMA floodplain panel maps for the county. It's only for the city of Goodland. But the one for the city of Goodland is from 1981. It is outdated since it still shows the Y out at Highway 24, and that's one of the things that triggered the questions and inquiries regarding it. It now is not, there's differences because Cherry Street and Highway 24 and Pioneer Park and the detention pond that's located there, the pumping out, may have differences for the flood zones within the city limits, and it could also have differences for people outside the near proximity of Goodland. I asked the state of Kansas, and they said that they did not have a response, a favorable response from Sherman County, has not expressed any interest, but this was a year ago when it said that. Which is how they typically move forward with a project. The floodplain analysis, and they added that I'm not certain if FEMA will let us move forward with a map for just the city or not, is the reason why for the county participation. They've also let other counties because Cheyenne County is going ahead, Thomas County and Wallace County are all going with at least the analysis, that each of those counties have been advised that they don't have to adopt it once it's presented as far as the floodplain mapping. But the analysis done, and kind of what Cheyenne County is doing, is basically because of St. Francis. And the same with Thomas County and Colby. And so they like getting input from the local community while that is occurring, obviously. And but that's why I wanted to bring it up, is if the county would have interest in having a conversation with the state officials about what that would consist of, and whether we could put together a project so that we could get something done so we could update at least the Goodland area. And it's through state resources, and it's not through the Division of Water Resources, which obviously I understand that might be, it gets difficult at times, obviously, but for the purposes that we need it for, I think it's at least something to look into and see what the possibility would be.
Okay, so what you're saying is the study could be done, the mapping could be done, but the county wouldn't have to adopt it. Is that what you're saying?
Right, that's what I was advised.
Because by adopting this, we could be obligating tens of thousands of acres of farm ground to then be required to carry flood insurance.
It's more about the structures on that farm ground than the farm ground itself.
Okay? So it doesn't affect cropland,
No.
it affects structures.
Although I would want 100% certainty on the answer to that question through someone
I
smarter
think
than
that's been the
myself.
fear. I think that's just kind of the back end of it. I think that's why the county's been reluctant to do it.
Sure.
To be obligating, farmers and ranchers to get flood insurance.
For additional costs.
Yeah, yeah.
It's more about the structures that are built within
Am I
the
kind of
zone.
hitting that, right? It's true. Okay, what's something like this cost to have this map?
It's actually through state. It doesn't cost the community anything.
Okay.
So who would we talk to as Sherman County to look at this feasibility and find out, if my structures on my farm are gonna have to have flood insurance, or if we do not endorse as a county, the county plan, but yet the city of Goodland can have their flood, plain study done, who do we talk to get the correct, get the straight answer?
And I talked with the floodplain coordinator and asked if she would be willing to come to a county commission meeting to answer specific questions regarding that, and she agreed.
I think that'd be the next step.
I think the floodplain coordinator, along with the Ryan Murray, emergency manager, would be a good couple of folks to discuss what's actually involved in the study itself, and then what are the steps after that.
If we can do something to get you guys where you need to be, but it doesn't obligate us or obligate farmers and ranchers out here to something that they're not gonna like, I don't have a problem with it.
I think that would be the goal.
That would be the goal, yes.
Yeah.
And when we get it, it's, 1981. Yeah, okay.
Well, when the roads are different, that's where I'm going.
Yeah.
You don't remember?
So really, I guess that would be get us in contact with who we need to schedule with. We'll talk to them.
I'll try to coordinate with Ashley to get that information to a subsequent meeting and see what questions develop.
Yep. That's the next step.
We appreciate your willingness to at least have a discussion.
Sure. Absolutely.
All right. Well, does anybody have anything else they wish to discuss this evening?
No, sir.
Discuss and discuss.
All right. Well, I do appreciate the meeting. I mean, everybody coming out. I thought it was a good meeting, lots of good conversations from everybody in the room, which is good to have. So, on that note, you guys wish to adjourn?
I have a motion for adjournment for county.
I'll make that motion.
We'll second.
Been moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion passed, county meeting is adjourned.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.